Now, our next guest played in the inaugural season of the WNBA and has seen the league grow ever since. Fran Harris is both an entrepreneur and a TV broadcaster calling games for the WNBA's Dallas Wings. And she also won, by the way, the first ever WNBA championship with her team, the Houston Comets, in 1997. Fran, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.
Good to see you, Lauren.
Okay, so I immediately had to get your reaction to these picks right now. I mean, Caitlin Clark, we saw it coming, but let's start there. What are your thoughts over her, Indiana Fever?
Love it, love it, love it. Caitlin's going to be giving a lot of folks, not just Jay, she's going to be giving a lot of folks fever this summer. No question about it. You know, one of the great things about Caitlin Clark is that she's been so humble, and yet she's done things that no other woman in women's college basketball has ever done. This is great for our game, and you're going to see a different brand of basketball with Caitlin Clark in the mix. I love her personality. I love her deadpan sense of humor, but more than anything, I love that jump shot.
Oh, yeah, me too. And let me say, when you say a different brand for the league, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, when you can shoot from 35 feet, it opens up so much. Here's what the court looks like when you're not shooting and making shots from 35 feet. It's very clumpish in the lane, in the free throw area. When Caitlin is standing at the half court and she's a threat to shoot, that's going to bring so much more space offensively to her teammates. So literally, just by having the skill of being able to shoot 30-footers, she's made the team better already, without even taking the jump shot yet, already.
I love it. You said right from the bat, it's happening. So let me ask you, because of course, the Caitlin Clark effect, I mean, it's been alive and well, but we got to talk about the other ladies tonight. Other top picks, who should fans be looking out for in your view?
You have to be looking out for Angel Reese and Carmilla Cardoso. I was so shocked that Teresa Weatherspoon, who I've known since she was in high school, the coach in Chicago, that they got Reese and Cardoso. I text Teresa and said, listen, if it were a T-shirt, it would say, don't bring that weak stuff in this lane. With those two picks, crazy, absolutely insane. But here's what tells me about Teresa Weatherspoon. She's a great guard, but she played with great post players. She hasn't forgotten that you need the post players to keep home in check.
Hey, what did Coach Witherspoon say in response to that text?
Well, she probably was busy, so I'll get a text from her later tonight.
I would love to hear that. Oh, my goodness. Okay, I got so many questions for you, so we're going to hang tight because I got to squeeze in a break here, but stay put. Fran Harris, WNBA broadcaster, former player, we're going to come back to her. And folks, stay with us because after the break, we're expanding on all this hype. Interest in women's basketball, it's soaring as fans connect with a new generation of stars. Fran will be back for all my questions and some thoughts that you probably are thinking as well. That's coming up next. Just in case you haven't heard, women's basketball is on fire. Interest in the game at both the collegiate and pro levels is exploding, due in no small part to the powerhouse performances being put on by a very talented crop of stars. As a result, attendance at top programs is up, ratings are up, advertising and media rights prices are up. In fact, the NCAA championship game held just over a week ago set ratings records. It averaged 18.9 million viewers, more than any game in last year's NBA Finals or MLB World Series. So you already know that's a lot of people watching, including young girls across the United States who are taking inspiration from what they are seeing out on the court. If Caitlin or Angel or Sabrina can do it, they can do it too.
It means that I can basically do anything I want.
I'm very excited to see how far it's going to come, especially when I get into high school next year.
All right, Fran Harris back with us. Just to remind you, because I love saying this on your behalf, she won the first ever WNBA championship with her team, the Houston Comets, in 1997. Fran, the WNBA, it's come a long way since 1997. I'm curious from your perspective, what has changed?
You know, these were the days that we prayed for. What's changed more than anything is the hype. Social media wasn't even, it was barely a thing. The internet was literally an embryo when we were winning the championship in 1997. And so what I think we've seen since then is just the sensationalism of women's sports. We've seen players get better because they're working more with trainers. We're seeing the hype around the sport get better because more eyeballs are on us, and we have delivered. Women's basketball has always delivered the goods when it comes to performance, but now more people are seeing us, more people are celebrating these young women.
I mean, to that point, the WNBA has looked to the future really from the beginning. I mean, the original tagline was, "We got next," right? So looking at how this year's class has brought this interest that you talk about to women's basketball, how do you see that embodying, or them rather, embodying that line for the WNBA now? How do they bring that forward?
Well, we didn't talk about the fact that Caitlin Clark is wearing Prada, the first person to get an endorsement deal from Prada. So now the shooter wears Prada. Remember the movie The Devil Wears Prada? Shooter wears Prada. Those kinds of endorsements and that kind of recognition by national brands, international brands, tells us that we have arrived. That yes, that women continue to raise the bar. They continue to show what's possible, not just for little girls, but also for young boys. What's possible if they dream, if they stick with it. When I was playing in the WNBA, again, this was the day that we dreamed of. And now to be here and to see it come to fruition is a thing of beauty.
And listen, Fran, I know that you call yourself, you're the serial entrepreneur. You got that business background. This is what you do. So I'm curious, how should everyone right now, I mean, to your point, capitalize on exactly what you just talked about, the fact that the business is really booming here?
The business is amazing. What was the number? 18.4 million people were watching it. I believe it peaked at 24 million during that championship game for the NCAA title game. South Carolina has brought additional eyeballs. Caitlin has brought additional eyeballs. Angel Reese has brought the eyeballs. So go get it. Talk to people about this game, but also I'd like to see more movies about women athletes. I'd like to see more television shows, more podcasts about women athletes and women's basketball players. Those are the things that I think are good indicators of how far we've come.
All right. Well, going back to the sport here, you know, going from college to the pros is a transition. And Jay actually had brought this up at the top of our show, but I want to read you what WNBA legend Diana Taurasi has said about this, because she told ESPN in part, quote, "You look superhuman playing against 18-year-olds, but you're going to come with some grown women who have played professional basketball for a long time." So how much of a transition period might there be for these young stars, and including the fact that there's this business bubble exploding around them, more attention? What do you think?
The first thing I'll say, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and all the other stars who got drafted today are doing a favor to the WNBA and all the players who are already there. Every generation does a little bit more. So even though a lot of people think Diana was salty, that's normal competitive nature. So the rookies, you're going to give the rookies a hard time. But what I really love is that once that hype starts to settle in, then Caitlin Clark has the opportunity to continue to build a legacy, to continue to raise the bar for young girls coming after her. I love what I'm seeing. I hope it's a lot of knocking folks on their butts in training camp. That's what it should be, because there will be a transition. Better, faster, stronger, quicker is what all of these rookies will face when they get into training camp in May.
Another thing we got a note here, which was that base salary of for Caitlin Clark being around $70,000 or around something like that. I don't know. I blacked out when I heard it because I was like, "Woo, okay." Seriously, every time it just gets me every time. But what does all of this mean when it comes to that conversation about pay in the WNBA?
It means we've still got a long way to go. You know, I look at what Caitlin's base salary is, and obviously we know Caitlin is going to cash in, as the other players are, on endorsements. But you have to remember the WNBA is relatively young. It's still less than 30, younger than 30 years old. The salaries have to catch up to where we are. And I think you will see that as we negotiate and renegotiate media rights, as more sponsors come into play, the salaries will get there. And hey, we have to keep our feet pushing toward that higher salary. We don't ever want to feel as though we're settled for anything less than we deserve.
And you mentioned renegotiating those contracts. In your view, is that the key here to kind of just continuing to push ahead? Because again, with your business hat on, what's the strategy for the WNBA moving forward with this momentum?
Well, there are a lot of things on the table for the Players Association. They have a huge job to make sure maternity rights are in play, that salary is just one aspect of it. We got to talk about charter flights so that they're not taking commercial flights with back-to-back games. There are a number of things on the menu of discussions that our players associations have to tackle. And I'm looking forward to this season to see what they check off.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the season, with this draft, and we were talking about Chicago Sky earlier, and just the fact that you've got that combo that you were talking about, that you texted Coach Witherspoon, like, what? This is happening. What does this mean for maybe?
Crazy.
It's crazy, but it's exciting because, we have seen the Aces really dominate as of late. I mean, just Liberty, New York Liberty. How does this shake up the competition? Speaking of competition.
When you see 17,000 plus at the championship game for the WNBA between the Las Vegas Aces and the New York Liberty, other franchises are chomping at the bit because those two franchises, New York Liberty, been there since the beginning, and the Aces have come on and really become the standard for what franchises should be. So there's a little bit of competition between the franchises, but there's also a lot of admiration for, hey, they've set the standard. They are the gold standard for where we go from here. We got to find some bigger arenas because 17,000, almost 17,200 last year in Brooklyn is not enough, obviously, the way the sport is going.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. All of the domino effect, if you will, that's all positive when it comes to growth in this expansion. Well, I've got a little bit of time left here with you. I am curious, what in your view has been the most surprising, the pleasant surprise, that has come out of all of this, especially with tonight, as, these women, their lives have changed. They begin this new chapter with, their now professional career.
Yeah, you know what the unfortunate thing is that most of these women have always lived during a time when there's been a WNBA. I tell my nephews that all the time. You've never existed when there hasn't been a WNBA. But think about the women who never got to play, the women who only wish they could have played in college before Title IX. Think about the women who had to share cars and share uniforms as some of the players did at the University of Texas and other places around the country. Think about that. Sometimes I feel like we need some context for how far we've come. And we need to pay homage to the women who really made this day possible because it is amazing.
I mean, it's so important, and what a grounding moment also for you to just establish and bring up that context, because you're right. And you mentioned it earlier in our conversation that this is a relatively young, league in general. So what an important reminder on such an exciting night for these players. Fran Harris, WNBA broadcaster and former player, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.
Good to see you. Thank you.
And folks, we'll be right back in just a moment.